What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us for today's discussion with Meet the Zor. I'm Nick Powills, publisher of 1851franchise.com. Today we are talking Sunny Street Café. Coming up next. All right, Mike, what I love about this category is that for how long breakfast brands have been around, this is a relatively new approach. And so the end user, the consumer, they see these brands as good places to get breakfast or brunch or lunch. To the business user or the potential franchisee, what's beautiful about this opportunity is that it is, in my opinion, the perfectly engineered business opportunity for someone that wants to get into the restaurant space with the hours of operation and the way that you've set the structure up. So right. To frame it for anybody that's watching this, first let's frame how you've got to this place as Sunny Street. What is the backdrop of the business story? And then just into State of the Union, where are things at? And then we'll break into what is this business opportunity.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Impactful intro, by the way. I always love that when I'm on these. Started off strong. Background on Sunny Street Café. We were founded in 2007. It was birthed out of a little concept called Peaches in Florida. And my father, who's been in the restaurant equipment business for 30 plus years, had wanted family to get involved in the restaurant industry. The challenge being, it can be hard, particularly, long hours, late nights, and lifestyles can suffer. So when he saw this Peaches opportunity, he talked me and my family into getting involved. And we started out working just in the state of Ohio. Pretty quickly realized that, we had something pretty special. We purchased the concept and rebranded the Sunny Street Café pretty early, and away we took it. So, it's been a really exciting ride, and I think some more exciting things in store. You talked a little bit about the segment and what the business opportunity involves or allows for somebody that wants to be an entrepreneur or is interested in the restaurant industry. And that's what we realized early on is if our culture and mantra is about family, if it's about like affording a certain kind of lifestyle and being able to do things outside of work, the breakfast lunch day part is the sweet spot because it's 6:30 to 2:30. So on a bad day, you get out at 3:00. So you have a life outside of work, and that trickles down from, ownership or management or franchisee all the way down to, at the hourly level. And it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different positive ways. Some of those ways, for example, are, like retention is a good example that I like to use. When you have folks that can, go to school in the evenings or have a second job or pick their kids up after work, our turnover is just not what it is in the rest of the industry because, again, you have this certain lifestyle and you have time in your day outside of, closing down shop Saturday at, midnight or 1 a.m. and then rinse and repeat the next day. I mean, it can be a grind. It can be difficult to juggle for people. So, we have people that have worked for us for 15 plus years, and I'm proud of that. And so that, that's baked into the culture and what we do.
If we look at the impact of what you just said back to the business, I want you to talk about just State of the Union, what happened in last year. But it's interesting because I know what the answer is. But you think about culture, you think about the way that you've engineered the business. You've put some focus onto categories of the menu to have some lift from a marketing standpoint. Like these things coming to fruition over the last 24 months or 12 months, has this led into the success and this is gearing you up for what is potential from a franchise growth standpoint?
Yeah, if you rewind to COVID, that was, those were challenging times for all restaurants, and it forced your hand as an operator or as a franchisor to be better. And if you didn't tighten up, you're probably not sitting here right now. So, we came out of COVID and we're better operators. Our menu got streamlined. We refocused on what we do great. And, now that's sort of manifesting itself. I've mentioned before, we're on our second year of double-digit growth. Our AUVs are super strong, and we've realized that we've got something here that is replicable and is really successful, and which is why we're ramping up, I guess, advertising the opportunity, which we haven't in the past. Back to leveraging or honing in on what we did really well. We were known for our pancakes. Pancakes as a category are very profitable. And when we asked folks and surveyed folks, our customers, what are we known for? What are we selling the most of those pancakes? But we weren't doing a great job at highlighting that. So, we're on the edge here next month of a little bit of a reboot on our menu, highlighting pancakes, elevating some more really special or wow items in terms of pancake presentation. It's just, it's really cool, really exciting stuff. So we just think that that's going to continue the momentum from what we've seen here over the last couple of years in terms of response from our customers and just sales growth.
When you look at the business opportunity, obviously you've been involved for quite some time. So is your family, and everything you're saying. We have good, strong gross volumes, and any candidate that wants to dive in deeper will, as a part of the sales process. You obviously go to the franchise site and enter in
Sure.
to have a discussion about what the business opportunity is. But you have all these things, like you've nailed the foundation. What do you think the gap has been between explosive growth and where you guys are at today, which is steady growth? You're still a steady growth brand, but what's the difference between explosive growth and where you are today?
Intent. We pump the brakes on growth because we have skin in the game. We own 10 restaurants of the 22 that are currently open, and we wanted to make sure that we were making decisions that were good for the system, but good for our stores too. So we feel like we're at a point now where we really have something replicable, and the trending is just supremely positive. So it's right now with our infrastructure and just where things are heading to make people know about it, because otherwise, if maybe somebody comes in and eats and asks and doesn't know it's a franchise or doesn't know it's an opportunity. So now, we're doing some more work to make sure that people know about it and they have the information available, as they're going out and, either looking at a restaurant or looking at the breakfast lunch segment.
I think there's something important that I want to call out that you just said, that I haven't called out in the way that I want to in the past. And you just said, we operate 10 units. Majority of players in the space, like competitor brands, have gone super heavy on the franchise side. If I think about competitor brands in the space that are non-franchise, they're capping out, call it a little bit south of 10 units. To be able to engineer a model, you've also engineered a model now that if you want to show someone how to scale a business, you can, and you've marched through the mud to figure out, like, how do we build this foundation? Like, I think that the corporate ownership ends up being a part of your why you why now as you move forward into the future, that helps differentiate you from your competition too. Do you see it the same way, as the investment that you're making corporately should have impact back to what you're going to try to do from a franchise standpoint?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's immediate validation because you're not making decisions or dictating things down to the system and not feeling the real impact on it, whether it's, build out decisions or, remodel and, menu, new product, new equipment. I mean, the list goes on. So we do those things and we're very cognizant of what's going to happen at the store level. So validation from franchisees that we currently have is big. We have a great core unit of franchisees that have been with us for a long time, and they're quick to give feedback, and they have that direct line too. So bottom line is they know decisions we're making impact them, but impact us too. So we're not just coming up with these grand ideas that are going to cost a bunch of money, but it's not out of our pocket. So what's the big deal? And that's that's been the situation in other concepts, and it can certainly get things sideways between a franchisor and a franchisee, and it can get a little sideways.
Just heard something else in your response there that I want to address, which is, said our franchisees are willing to give us feedback, but I also heard we're willing to listen. Do you think, like, if you're thinking about the way that you're building the culture, because that's ultimately why someone's going to buy into a business. You have a widget, but they're looking at you culturally and saying, is this something where I feel you're going to have my back? You're going to help give me the tools to be successful, and then my peers are going to be, building around me to do the same as well. But listening part of the magic piece? If you're defining what you would call a great franchise, is that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, people want to be heard first and foremost, but as we're starting to have conversations with folks that are interested in the concept, I think, potentially being at the ground level, but, actually having feedback into the direction of the brand, that is the entrepreneurial spirit. So if some people just, want something and, they want that widget and flip a switch and that's that, but that's not how we've designed this. And I think that goes back to being a family-owned company and just, some of our pillars. We take our franchisees and their feedback very seriously, and they've had, excellent ideas from menu to design. And, that's another conversation. Just tons of good things that have happened over the years have been from the franchisee community. So I do think that's unique. I don't hear that often, and I like to think that's a selling point. I mean, we'll see.
What's your dream for the brand now? I mean, obviously, like, you've lifted up, you've touched many different departments in your journey at Sunny Street when your dad brought you in to now leading the company. The dream is now evolving because you're continuing to step into more of a leadership role. What's your dream now for where this brand goes?
Yeah, I mean, we think we're just on the first step of this, and with controlled growth in mind, the segment is super underserved. So, my dream for this is to expand, but expand the right way with the right people that, want to be, that reflect some of the things we've talked about in terms of the culture, in terms of how they want to be involved with the franchise system. So that's through franchise growth, and that's through company growth too. We're out there and we're looking at, opening new locations too, just based on the success of our own internal stores. So, when you have company restaurants that are making money, when you have franchisees that are making money, that's a recipe for success. And, it shows the health of the system right now. And, again, I just go back to momentum. It's not like we had, a quarter of great sales and, some good profitability, and that's that. I mean, we're really trending, for the last 24 plus months in an excellent direction. So
I'm gonna reverse that question because I'm curious for entrepreneurs and for leaders. What about fear? What's your fear with the business?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always something, right? So, food cost of goods was a major issue 2 months ago when commodity prices spiked and distribution was so hairy, and we had to do some things to shift or pivot there. But things have stabilized, and we made some good decisions on the menu, and it looks good now. So labor was a challenge that if you ask anybody in the industry right now, they would say that is probably number one. Where's the workforce going to come from? So we're spending a lot of time, one, to make sure we retain people, two, operationally taking a look at how the restaurants are set up and how many folks we need at a peak hour or at an off hour, to make sure we're delivering service, but to make sure we keep our labor costs down. And those have been wins too. I mean, our food and labor costs are as low as they've ever been in the last 15 years, and that's pretty strange given the climate in terms of food right now. And given the climate in terms of labor. So, you just have to be able to adjust. So you don't live in fear, but certainly labor, we're going to have to continue to monitor that and make good decisions in terms of food costs. And hopefully we make the right steps,
Well, I'm going to give you my feedback or my opinion on labor as it relates back to your business, and any comments are great. But I think about call it a best in class brand, which call Chick-fil-A best in class. And part of what they've done is culturally what happens when you work for them. Operationally, it's a very simple operation. You're in essence dropping fries or chicken into fry oil, and then you're pulling it out and you're giving it to the customer. Like they've made it fairly simple from an operational standpoint. And then the closed on Sundays, for what it's worth, I think that also hits something that might hit people who want to work for them, and that adds another level of flexibility. You're not worrying about having to work on a Sunday, and you get that family time. If I take that as a best practice, very few categories have said, how do we take some of those things and cross apply it over to our business? And in essence, that's what you've done. And given there's others in the space, but this is a category that has really embraced it. If you take, a burger brand that's open from 10 a.m. to midnight, or 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., like it's just such a larger stretch. And now the labor becomes a little bit more challenged. So what I'm hearing, if I'm trying to extract your secret sauce, you're investing in the culture, you're operating corporate locations, so you actually know what it's like to work with a staff and build retention so that you can give that advice back to franchisees, not manage their employees, but give advice back to the focus on retention, and then the hours of allowing your life to actually still have life in this space, which traditionally the McDonald's of the world, it's a little bit more hectic of a life. It's more built around the business and built around the people. And so I'm hearing all these things that you're extracting. It's like the Better Breakfast segment has done a good job from an hour standpoint on doing that. And now you're adding the icing on the cake from a cultural standpoint to say, focus on retention. We're going to operate corporate units and continue to engineer this so that when our franchisees open, who most likely are not experts in HR, at least you have a blueprint for them to follow. Like I see what's being built, and I think you're adding a new ingredient to the puzzle piece in the way that you're approaching labor, for what I see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one shift staffing is pretty atypical. Generally you're managing your morning shift or your morning crew, and then you've got your afternoon and evening crew, or there's a lunch crew and a dinner crew. So one shift is a beautiful thing, and it really simplifies the management at the store level. Also keeping them kind of back to the Chick-fil-A thing. We've worked hard to simplify the menu. You still need to be able to have wow items and have items that folks can't make it home, right? But generally, when you go out to breakfast, you want eggs, bacon, and hash browns. So you got to be able to nail that. And then you have to be able to have the decadent or wow items that people want to treat themselves with. But we don't have head chefs or corporate chefs. The menu is executable at the hourly level. Again, simplicity being a beautiful thing for consistency and to be able to replicate it. So yeah, both of those things sort of touch on what you hit on, which is, how does the model work, and what are we focusing on to make sure that there's continued success and it's replicable.
Yeah, I want to add this comment, and I'm going to put some commentary on this before I ask Spencer's question, just because if someone's participating live, I like to bring them into the conversation. So Spencer said, are there any possibilities of mobile Sunny Street Cafe, trailer, or truck? And I will just extend that and say, have you thought about innovation from real estate standpoint too, as a part of where the business could go?
Sure. We've played around with the trailer truck idea. I mean, ultimately, there's just less money to make there. So it's not something that we've vested in heavily. One thing we have done, and the question gets asked quite a bit, breakfast and lunch, you're still paying for that real estate for 24 hours a day. And people get a little heartburn if you're going to turn the lights off at 3 and you're not doing anything, even though you're paying for the space. So, we identified catering as sort of our third day part or our extra revenue stream, vested heavily in that a number of years ago, and it's just taking off right now. A lot of beautiful things happening there. One, cross-utilizing SKUs. So our menu lends itself well to catering. So we're not bringing in a ton of extra product. There are some paper goods that you need to stock, but generally speaking, pretty simple to implement the catering program, based on the current menu and the current operation. Part two was, it's just white space. There's not a lot of breakfast catering out there. When you think about an office meeting or a breakfast catering, it's what, continental breakfast, fruit and baked goods and coffee or donuts maybe. So, we figured out how to do hot breakfast, either buffets or, boxed lunches, which became huge after the pandemic, was, individually boxed items for people so that there wasn't, kind of lots of hands on buffet spoons and things like that. That's calmed down a bit now, but, figuring out how to do eggs well, they can be finicky, how to do individual breakfast burritos at high quality items that stand out. And the response is overwhelming. The demand is there. It's through the roof. I have some ideas of why that is, and smarter people than me can probably speculate too. But that's really been a boon for the business, and restaurants that are utilizing that catering program they're growing by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing there is obviously like you're constantly looking at what forms of innovation need to hit the business model. Food truck might not make sense now. Maybe it ties into catering at some point. But I think that's a good way of looking at it. Is like let's just continue to the North Star has to be, can this make money as it relates back to the business opportunity, and can this have impact to our customers? So I think that's a good governor that goes on that. So Mike, what I want to close with is, it's almost like if you're looking straight out there into the world of anybody that's watched this, and someone's on the edge, they've thought about franchising, maybe they've gotten close in the past, but they haven't gone over the edge. Give a good clear why should they reach out? What is the reason why they should look at Sunny Street?
Well, for somebody that hasn't visited one of the restaurants, certainly a lot of the things we've talked about are going to be check marks that should spark their interest. If you wanted to go into business, whether you're, in the restaurant game and you're looking to add your portfolio, particularly in this segment, which is just, so hot right now, or maybe you haven't been a restaurateur in your past, but, you want to get into business, you want to be an owner. Some of our most successful franchisees, they didn't have a lick of restaurant experience, but they had the entrepreneurial spirit. They wanted to be a part of something, and that's enough, because like I said, we've built the system and we've simplified it so that we can show you how to do this. So again, if you haven't eaten one of our restaurants and tried the food, I would say, looking at the space, and that exciting you. And then part two, meeting with us face to face. I think this is a people business. There's lots of concepts out there, and there's a lot of great concepts out there. So, ultimately we got to feel good about each other. That, I always talk about vibe, but do you think we're heartfelt and we're sincere and we're passionate about this, and that this isn't a fly-by-night operation, but we're really building something that can be big and can build wealth for you and your family. So that's what it's been about for us, and that's why we got into it all those years back, and that's what we're interested in replicating.
Well, look, and again, I'm throwing these pieces on here because it's the way that I see it. One, the fact that you have 10 restaurants and you've been doing this for such a long period of time, I think that's a huge reason why someone might want to look at investing alongside you. You have a roadmap of how to get to 10, and there's going to be a magic number here where eventually you've paid off your previous investments, and that continues to build additional wealth. And I think engineering a viable business that can be sustainable over time is a critical part of this equation. I also think about Five Guys, which I think they were founded in 1984. But if most people talk about where did their franchise growth come from. They're like, oh, I thought they were founded in the early 2000s and they exploded. No, they basically spent 20 years perfecting things. Whether it was done on purpose, they were a franchise, but they weren't pushing it in a way. And I see some similarities in that. Like, you've had some good franchisees, long-term franchisees who did fight their way into the system. You've worked on perfecting the culture of looking across the room from someone and saying, we want you as a part of our business family. You've obviously worked hard and diligently on the menu and maximization of how can we drive the most amount of customer base in here and how do we make it sticky so our customers come back. And very rarely, especially in this category, if you look at the bigger brands in the space, they didn't sit around and perfect the model. They basically said, let's go, and they franchised immediately. And you and I have talked about this. If you look at the history of majority of brands in the better breakfast category, getting to 20, 30, 40, 50 locations, it's a good drive. And then the bottom falls out because the foundational elements weren't there. I think you've taken a different approach here that could potentially set you up for a very nice future. And I obviously appreciate you sharing some of your story with our audience today. And if anybody's watched this, this could be a brand that you go ahead and check out if you're looking to get in the restaurant space, or you're interested in restaurant space and you don't have a huge depth of experience in the restaurant space. This might be a brand that makes sense. So Mike, thanks for having this discussion with me. Look forward to seeing where the brand story goes in the next year.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. Appreciate it.
Of course. For Mike, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.